Hello again, everyone. Before we get started with our knowledge lesson today, we're going to quickly review some of the things we've already talked about. The first thing I want to review with you is this very special woman right here. Do you remember who this lady is? This woman's name was Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was born into slavery in the South, but later used the Underground Railroad to escape and find freedom in the North. She became a conductor on the Underground Railroad and helped other enslaved people find freedom. I'm going to make a timeline to help us remember some of the order that some of these events happened in. The next thing I want to review is this man. Do you remember who this man is? This man is named Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was elected to be President of the United States in the year 1860, after Harriet Tubman escaped. Now, during this time in United States history, the United States was split into the North and the South. And then people in the North and the people in the South disagreed about a lot of things. Was Abraham Lincoln very popular in the South? No. Abraham Lincoln believed that slavery should not extend to new states and territories, and people in the South were worried that he would try to also abolish slavery in the South. So he was not popular. In fact, they removed his name from the ballot for the presidential election. But enough people in the North voted for him that he was still able to become president anyway. After he became president, tension between the North and the South kept getting worse. So the disagreement and the conflict kept getting worse, which eventually led for 13 states in the South to secede from the United States. What does it mean to secede? It means to leave or to remove yourself from. So they were no longer part of the United States. They formed their own country called the Confederate States of America. Now, Abraham Lincoln and several people in the North thought that it was wrong for them to secede. They wanted the country to stay united as one country. Did this happen before Abraham Lincoln was president or after? After. In our last lesson, our last couple of lessons, we talked about the bombardment of Fort Sumter and the first battle of Manassas. I want you to turn to whoever is helping you today and tell them what we learned about that first battle of Manassas today. What happened in our last read aloud? Yesterday we focused on a what, the first battle of Manassas of the Civil War. Today we're going to focus on a who. We are going to be talking about an important person in the Civil War. That person's name is Robert E. Lee. We will learn more about him as soon as we go over our vocabulary words. The first word is advisors. Advisors are people who give suggestions or advice. Teachers, parents, coaches, and friends can all be advisors. If you have an older brother that encourages you to try out for the basketball team, he would be an advisor. But if Mr. Carpenter asked Miss Acuna and Mrs. Gardner for suggestions for a new school motto, and they didn't help him or give him any suggestions, they would not be advisors. Think of a time when you have been an advisor to someone else. Oath. An oath is a promise made before a witness. For example, before you testify in court, you must take an oath to tell the truth. Frail. If something is frail, it means that it is weak or fragile. For example, Daniel helps his frail grandfather take care of his garden. General. A general is a military officer of high rank or position. Wasteland. A wasteland is an area that is devastated or destroyed by something such as a flood, storm, or war. For example, the First Battle of the Civil War turned the city of Manassas, Virginia, into a wasteland. Today we are going to learn about a very important battle that took place during the U.S. Civil War. Pay attention as you listen to the read aloud to find out more about what the Union and the Confederacy were doing during this battle. After 2 days of fighting, the cornfields around Gettysburg, Pennsylvania were all destroyed, so that one could hardly tell that there had been crops there at all. Green grassy pastures trampled by so many boots and horse hooves were now nothing but mud. The trees in the forests had lost their leaves, and many were burned or simply blown to bits by cannonballs. In short, all around Gettysburg was a wasteland, but the battle was not over yet. Remember, a wasteland is an area that has been completely devastated or destroyed. What do you think is going to happen in Gettysburg if it has been turned into a wasteland? It was past midnight. The date was July 3rd, 1863. 2 Confederate soldiers stood guard outside the door of a small stone farmhouse at the edge of the battlefield. Several Confederate officers paced back and forth in the yard. "Should we see if he's ready to issue orders?" asked one of the officers. "No, don't bother him. The old man will let us know when he is ready," said another. Inside the house, a man stood hunched over a table, studying a map by candlelight. He was not a very old man, just 56 years old, but constant war and worries had brought new wrinkles to his face. He was far more thin and frail, or weak, than he had been just 2 years before. But all the soldiers loved General Lee as though he were their own father. They called him the old man out of respect. Remember, a general is a military officer that's in charge of soldiers. General Lee was in charge of the Confederate Army. General Lee's full name was Robert E. Lee. General Lee was born in 1807. He was the son of a hero from the Revolutionary War, who had fought bravely alongside George Washington to make America free from Great Britain. Robert E. Lee joined the Army at age 17 and graduated second in his class from the United States Military Academy. He had the second highest scores in his class, which means he did very well in school. Then, Lee served in the U.S. Army during the Mexican-American War. Lee was proud to serve in the U.S. Army before the Civil War, but Robert E. Lee was born and raised in Virginia, a Confederate state. Lee married Mary Custis, a great-granddaughter of George and Martha Washington. After they married, Robert and Mary lived in Mary's plantation home, known as Arlington House. This is a photo of Arlington House in Virginia. Lee did not think that the South should secede from the Union. Remember, secede means to leave. Like many other people, he wanted to find a peaceful way to end the disagreement, and he swore he would never break the oath he had taken to uphold the U.S. Constitution. At first, Lee refused to join the Confederate Army when President Jefferson Davis asked him to take command. Remember, Jefferson Davis was elected president of the Confederacy. He's the man in this picture who is sitting with a paper in his hand. Then, just before the Battle of Fort Sumter, President Lincoln asked Lee if he would agree to take command of the entire Union Army. Lee refused that offer as well. So he refused to lead the Confederate Army, and he refused to lead the Union Army. Only when his home state of Virginia decided to secede and join with the Confederacy did Lee finally make up his mind. He hated the thought of fighting against the United States, but even more, he hated the thought of fighting against his home state of Virginia. General Lee became commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, making him one of the most powerful and recognizable figures in the Confederate Army. This picture shows Confederate President Jefferson Davis and his closest advisors, including General Lee in the middle, discussing their war plan. Thanks in large part to General Lee's excellent abilities as a general, he commanded the Confederate Army to many victories in major battles on the field before Gettysburg. But still, so many men had died in those battles, and there was no end to the war in sight. There was a knock on General Lee's door in Gettysburg. It was Major Venable, Lee's trusted friend and aide, or helper. "General, I have reports from your field commanders," said Major Venable. "Go ahead," he said, turning his attention back to the maps on the table. "General Ewell had trouble organizing his men, sir, and General Rhodes failed to attack as ordered. General Early tried, but he gave up as darkness approached." Lee tapped his knuckles on the table and stared at the maps. There had been nothing but bad news all day. After 2 days of fighting, the Union Army held the high ground, its soldiers and cannons spread in a tight line atop a long ridge, refusing to budge no matter how fiercely the Confederates attacked. The Union Army was on higher ground than the Confederate Army, so they had a better position and ability to see. "I have made my decision," Lee said. "We will strike at the heart of the Union line at Cemetery Ridge and divide their forces. Then the rest of our army will attack on the left and the right." In the morning, the old man rode out to greet his soldiers. The men cheered and waved their hats whenever Lee rode past, and he waved and smiled confidently, doing his best to keep their spirits high. Later that morning, though, things did not go exactly according to Lee's plans. The Confederate forces attacked, hoping to break through their Union lines and send the enemy retreating from the field. Lee knew that if he succeeded, the South would have a chance to win the war. If he lost, it may not. Take a minute to make a prediction. What do you think is going to happen? The battle went on all day, but the most important moment came when Lee ordered General Pickett to lead his men in a daring charge across a wide, open field directly at the middle of the Union lines. The move, known as Pickett's Charge, was a catastrophe for the Confederates. A catastrophe is an event that causes great trouble or destruction, so Pickett's Charge caused a great deal of trouble for the Confederate side. Half of Pickett's men were killed, wounded, or captured. At the end of that third day, the Union still held the high ground. Lee had lost the battle and had to retreat to Virginia, abandoning hopes of invading deep into the North. The day after the battle was the 4th of July, a day when Americans normally celebrate their independence. In 1863, however, celebrations were not so cheerful. Even in the North, where word quickly spread that the Union had won a major battle at Gettysburg, a war-torn nation was exhausted from battle. In the 3 days of the battle at Gettysburg, many men had died, were wounded, or had been captured on both the Union and Confederate sides. This battle proved to be one of the bloodiest in all of the Civil War. With all of that bloodshed, few people on either side found reason to celebrate.
All right, my friends, I have some questions for you about Mr. Robert E. Lee.
How did he become the commander of the Confederate Army? Did he want to be the commander of the Confederate Army at first? No, he refused at first. And President Lincoln even asked him to be the commander of the Union Army, but he refused President Lincoln's offer as well. He was from the state of Virginia. Let's look at our map. We can see the state of Virginia right here. It's this gray one with the initials VA. Was Virginia part of the Union or the Confederacy? It was part of the Confederacy. Because Virginia was part of the Confederacy, and Robert E. Lee was from Virginia, he wanted to be loyal to his home state of Virginia and decided to command the Confederate Army instead of the Union Army. How did his soldiers feel about him? Did they like him? Were they afraid of him? Did they not like him? His soldiers really liked him. They loved and respected him. They even had a nickname for him. Do you remember what their nickname for him was? They called him the Old Man, affectionately. Do you think that General Lee made the right decision when he decided to lead the Confederate Army instead of the Union Army? I want you to turn and talk about that one with whoever is helping you today. Tell them why or why not. Why do you think it was a good decision, or why do you think it was a bad decision for him to lead the Confederate Army? When you have that conversation wrapped up, my friends, open up the PDF that is attached to this assignment. I'm going to move over to my computer so I can show you what to do today. All right, on that very first page in our assignment today, we have our somebody wanted, but, so, then. We use this format to help us remember important information in stories that we've read or to help us retell them. Today, who was our somebody? Who did we talk about today? Today, we talked about General Robert E. Lee. Now, General Robert E. Lee, did he want to go to war right away? No, he didn't. Like many people in America at this time, he wanted to find a peaceful way to end the disagreement between the North and the South. He didn't want to go to war right away, but something happened. We found out that war would be inevitable when 13 states, including General Lee's home state, where he was from, Virginia, did what? What did those 13 states do? They seceded or separated from the United States. His home state of Virginia seceded from the United States. So he made the decision, instead of fighting against his home state of Virginia, he decided to fight for the Confederacy instead. There we go. Then, did he do a good job fighting for the Confederacy? He did. Even though the Confederacy were fighting for something that was very evil and very wrong, he was a very skilled general, and he used his skill to lead the Confederate Army to many victories. All right, my friends, when you have your chart all filled out like mine, we're going to jump to the next part of our assignment today. The next part of our assignment today is our Civil War journal. Today, we are, of course, going to be talking in our journal about Robert E. Lee. Remind me again, which side was Robert E. Lee fighting for? Right, he was fighting for the Confederacy. Some things you might want to talk about in your journal entry about Robert E. Lee, some things you might want to think about are, what was his important job? What important job did he have during the Civil War? What kind of person do you think he was? What do you think he was like? Do you think he was a good general? And one thing we talked about today was his role in the Battle of Gettysburg. What was that role? What did he do in the Battle of Gettysburg? Try and answer those questions in your journal entry today. Remember that journal entry should be 3 to 5 complete sentences. That means that you have a subject, you have a predicate, you start with a capital, and you end with a period or exclamation mark or question mark. There are 2 pages there for your writing if you need both. When you are done in this box where I wrote our notes, you are going to draw a picture or a portrait of Robert E. Lee. When you are all finished with that, you are done with knowledge today, and I will see you next time.